already pesticide resistant gene is built in. In other words, you can transfer that gene into plants somehow by technology. Okay? And then you sell those seeds. So you plant those seeds. And your plant, your corn or your beans are resistant to pesticide. Okay? So the idea is you spread out pesticide, 살충제. You kill all the other weeds. Okay? And your corn is because it's resistant. Okay, that's the idea. And then the idea is you can improve the productivity. Okay? But what happened in some cases, in India and other places, the genetically modified cotton. Okay, cotton is a big agricultural product in India, and then somehow they sold the transgenic seeds. Okay, in many years, in 3 years, I remember, they planted that cotton, but they failed to produce higher yields of cotton, and then that generate a lot of problem in India. Okay, that's one problem, economic problem. The second problem is those transgens you introduce. You wanted to keep only that resistant gene in your plant, for example, corn or beans. But in the field, what happened is that transgene you introduced, the resistant gene, can jump into other plants. We don't know how they can transfer to other plants. And the weeds, which we don't want to grow, if they accept those, they acquire that resistant gene, they become super weeds. Okay? You cannot kill by spreading pesticide. That's the problem. Very similar problem to our health problem. If you keep eating antibiotics, okay? If you get sick, you sometimes, if you have inflammation, you eat these antibiotics, right? But when you have flu, okay, a lot of people want to go to see doctor and ask them to give a shot. Okay, that shot is mostly antibiotics. But we know for virus, antibiotics doesn't work. Okay? Antibiotics is for against bacteria. Bacteria. But our flu, 감기, is caused by virus. There's no special drug. Well, there's some against antivirus, but usually you don't get it unless this is like pandemic influenza or something like that. Okay? So what you take, if you keep antibiotics, what happens is some of your bacteria live with you, can acquire that resistant gene. And that happens if you really need antibiotics, you really need to kill bacteria, then you cannot kill them. Okay? So it's a big problem. Superbacteria, same thing. Okay? So in my opinion, the battle between human and pathogens, for example, bacteria or virus, there's no clear winner. It's all, they compete each other. It's just like competition between zebrafish and what do you say? 표범 영어 뭐야? Cheetah, whatever. Okay, so it's a speed game. Okay, who's faster? If a cheetah faster, they can catch zebra and then they can eat. Okay, then zebra also. Then the faster zebra can survive. Okay, then they run away faster. Then cheetah has to starve to death. Okay, it's always competition goes. There's no clear winner of it. Okay, same thing for our health. Okay, all right. So let's start chapter 16. It's totally different subject, evolution. Okay, will just go off, travel 5 years to collect beetles. How many of you can do it? Yes, there could be one. So it was something like 1830s, right? So what happened in Korea 1830s? Maybe 실학파, maybe 정약용, maybe he could have collected enough sample to say anything about biology, maybe. But anyway, so this 5 years, okay, a dropout from medical school, okay, has great impact on biology. That's the concept of evolution. So we're gonna go through chapter 16. It's about evolution, okay. So let's see what is the concept of evolution. What is its principle? What is the concept of evolution? Okay. All right, so the key concept is summarized with these words, okay? The theory of evolution says, okay, a common descent with modification. What does that mean? There must be a common descent, okay? It's start with one, well, not one, but common ancestors, okay? And with time, enough time, they become different each other, and then they become different species, okay? By modification. They change a little bit, okay? And then the species split, okay, become different species, and that happens, okay? That happens. So long period of time, that is what we are on the living things. Okay, so that is common descent. Common descent means it's coming from same ancestor with modification. Okay, they change slowly, they become different. Okay, so this principle describes the process by which species of living things can undergo modification. They can change over time, with such change sometimes resulting in the formation of new separate species. Okay, that's his conclusion. So all species on Earth have descended from other species. Life is coming from life. Okay, and the common ancestor lies at the base of evolutionary tree. That's the main concept. Okay. That's the first key concept. And the second one, what drives that process? What is the modification? No, what drives this modification? Okay, what drives this change? Okay, it's called natural selection. In the movie, he talked about horse breeding, right? Racehorse breeding. What did he say about it? What did he call it? Artificial selection, okay? He started with explain how these horse races are faster than any other horses. What is the process? People selectively breed. You pick the fast horse and you breed with healthy horses, and you keep selecting what you want. Okay? Same thing he tried to explain. The natural environment or whatever is selecting, okay, certain characters, and that is driving force for modification. Okay, you become a little different, and the difference is being selected. Okay, that's the concept. Okay, so the example of artificial selection was the race horses. Okay, so natural selection is a process through which traits, characteristics that confer a reproductive advantage. This is important. Another important concept. So what has been selected? Okay, it doesn't matter how good you look or how big you are. The selection is for reproductive advantage. How many offsprings you can reproduce. Okay, So how many children Darwin had? 10 children, right? It's old days. They have many, many children, right? So that's one key points of reproductive advantage, because we'll learn next chapters. Evolution happens not individually. It happens in population. Okay? The basic unit of evolution is not individual, but a population. Okay? So the question is, how many offspring of yours will become, what part of population is? If you reproduce a lot, you can make a bigger portion in the population. Okay? Some of them will be selected. Okay? All right. So the theory of evolution has importance beyond the domain of biology. That was why it was difficult for him to write right away. Okay? Because as you saw in movie, at that time, the religion was a big part of life. Okay, and in Bible or in religion, God is responsible for creation of all the living things. Okay, so human beings have become aware that they are descended from other variety of living things. They are evolved from other species. Okay, not just special creation of God, the human beings. Okay, and the organisms that populate the living world are not fixed entity, because they keep changing. We're in the process of still evolving. For example, these days you look more familiar. You're more comfortable with reading from the computer screen than reading books. Just one generation, maybe less than one generation, you're comfortable with reading screens. It's flat screens, right? But if you read books, it's not exactly flat. Okay, so still I'm more familiar with reading papers instead of reading from the screen. Okay, so we're still probably most of you here, with the earphone, right? Probably within one generation, probably will have very bad hearing when you become 50 or 60s, right? I can still hear a lot of things, but okay. So Charles Darwin and the theory of evolution. So we saw his life, right? So his father wanted him to become a medical doctor, but he didn't probably like it. So instead, he finished in ministry. He never become a priest, but anyway. So he jumped into this ship called Beagles. Okay, so he spent 5 years on the ship. He collected all the samples. He brought all of them back home, and he studied for 20 years. And then he wrote a book, The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection. That is the key concept of evolution. Okay. Charles Darwin deserves the primary credit for theory of evolution. So if you say evolution, Charles Darwin. Okay. Darwin developed existing ideas about descent with modification. Around that time, many people agreed that it's a happening. In other words, descent with modification. If the same species goes a little bit longer, they become different. There would be modification. Okay, but he's the one who provided a lot of evidences. Okay, to explain that. Okay, a large body of evidence in supporting. Okay, he was the first to perceive, but he could explain why this thing is happening. Okay, the natural selection is his idea, his main idea. Okay, but there is one more person who had the same idea. We'll come back to that point about natural selection. Okay, so he was the first to perceive natural selection as the primary process that drives evolution. Okay, Darwin's insights were inspired by the research he carried out during 5-year voyage he took around the world on the ship called Beagles, beginning 1931. It took 5 years, goes around all the world. It's not like just traveling. Okay, it was probably dangerous at the time. Okay, he was on board as a naturalist. In other words, he can collect samples. There are also the purpose of this trip is measuring the roots in the ocean at the time. Okay, so there were just officers on the ship, and some of them died of disease during the trip. Okay, it's not just going 5 years, travel. At that time it's very dangerous, but he took the risk. Okay, some of you may want to go off someday, but right? Okay, so this is replica of this ship Beagle. Okay, this is the route. So they left 1931 December. Okay, so they go through around South Africa. And these islands, what islands? Galapagos. Okay, Galapagos Islands. They stayed, I think, 4 weeks or longer time than other spots. Okay, so he collected many finches, little birds, okay, other samples from there, and then come back. They stopped in Australia and came back October 1936. It took almost full 5 years. Okay. So evolutionary thinking before Darwin. So he didn't come up with like just bright idea from nothing. Okay. Around that time, other scientists thought about something else. Okay. He knew those things. It was incorporated to his idea. So some of the Darwin's idea can be traced to the work of Charles Lyell, okay, who noted the dynamic geological nature of Earth. Okay, so at this point, whose idea is what is important around that time? Okay, the first one is called Charles Lyell or Lyell. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he's geologist. He studied Earth. Okay, and he published a book called Principles of Geology. What is the main idea of his book? Okay, Earth. He was studying, Earth. Earth is steadily undergoing change. It's not, fixed entity. It's stopped there. It's keep changing. Okay. Then he thought about if the Earth is keep changing, the environment is keep changing, then why not? The living things on Earth could be keep changing. That's the main idea. Okay, it's not just fixed. That's it. No more change. No, it's undergoing constant, steady change. That's the first idea. The second one is John Baptiste de Lamarck, all right, and George Cuvier. First one, Lamarck. Okay, his idea of inheritance. Okay, children look like their parents. Okay, but his idea is how these traits being inherited to children is like he talked about the possibility of descent with modification. In other words, with generations, the children will become a little bit different from their parents. Okay, so same idea with common descent with modification. But his idea was a little bit, not correct in our knowledge. What is inheritance of acquired characteristic. 획득 형질의 유전. Okay, think about acquired characteristics. Okay, for example, things like this. Think about 류현진 or Park Chan-ho. Okay, they're excellent pictures. Okay, the question is whether Chan-ho get married, right? If Lee Hyun-jin get married and they have son, then he will be also become a good pitcher, right? Yes, maybe, no? Okay, so acquired characteristic means he become a good pitcher by practicing and practicing. Maybe his right arm gets a little longer than left arm. I don't know. But if he has his son born with longer right arms, no, right? We know that because DNA doesn't get the new information based on acquired characteristics, right? He may have very athletic son, who can be good athletics, but that's it, right? There's no inheritance of acquired characteristics, okay? But Lamarck thought about this, okay? Why this duck can swim with this fins or whatever, okay? He thought duck has to swim a lot, okay? So by doing a lot of practice swimming, they have this fins, okay? And that can be inherited, which is not true. Also, think about giraffe, okay? They have very, very long neck, okay? Because they have to stretch necks, their necks become longer and longer. No, that's not, okay? So then what? How can you select, okay? So it's population, and population means there is a characters, the traits has variation in it, right? At some point, at certain time, certain environment can select specific traits among population. That's how it's being inherited, okay? All right, so the other one is George Cuvier and extinction. What is extinction? 멸종, okay, all gone, okay? So Cuvier was studying fossils. What is fossils? Fossils, 화석, it become a solid rock, okay? So he studied fossils, okay? Fossil evidence for extinction. Some of the creatures, living things in the fossil, they don't exist anymore. In other words, at some points they all died, wiped out. Okay, that's extinction. Okay? Extinction was a radical notion that God created creature could be perished. So think about in religious concept, if God created that creature has to live long, right? They are not supposed to be extinct, right? But he found some fossil evidence. There are some species, they don't exist anymore. And then we have the same fate. We might be extinct at some point. Okay? So he thought that there has been a series of catastrophe, 재난, 큰 재앙, okay, such as flood that wiped out life in given area. Okay? So that's the idea. In other words, the species is not always continuous go away. If environment change, some will be extinct. Okay? That's the concept. Okay, Darwin's insight following the Beagle's voyage. So how did he come up with this natural selection? Okay, so Darwin understood the descent with modification for several years before, comprehended the natural selection was most important process driving it. Okay, but he got this idea from other, study. Okay, for example, he was reading a book by Malthus. Okay, his book is called An Essay on the Principles of Population. He's not a biologist, but a sociologist. In other words, he studied human population. Okay, his book is, if there's too many people, okay, they don't have enough food, they don't have enough places to live, and what you have to compete each other. Okay, so if you lose in the competition, you're in bad shape. Okay, that's the main idea. Okay, Darwin thought about what about these finches or other species live in nature? They're the same phenomenon, right? If the population is much higher than the nature that can sustain the population, then there is a stiff competition. Okay? So what this drive, some left behind and some will be selected. Okay, that's the concept of natural selection. Okay? There was one more person, okay, who thought about very, very similar thing. Okay, his name is Alfred Russel Wallace. Okay, he was a naturalist again, and he worked on East Asia. So his job was catch beautiful butterflies and then make sample and sold them to the museums in London or in England. Okay, so he goes out and chase butterflies, finding insects, and he come up with the same idea. Okay, something is selecting characteristics. So, for example, why is this some of the insects male become so bright in color? Okay, and that's his question. And then it's a selection. There is a pressure, natural pressure that select those more beautiful, more bright, colorful, maybe insects. Okay, so he come up with a very similar idea, and he wrote letter to Charles Darwin. Okay, and his idea. And when Charles Darwin received the letter, he was surprised because he has the same idea. Okay, so he hurried up to writing his book. He finished up. He published 1936. Okay. All right. English naturalist Alfred Russel Wallace is the co-discoverer. That's why we call it. We give some credit to Wallace. Okay. Co-discoverer. Okay. They had a very similar idea at the time of natural selection as the principal process underlying evolution. Okay. So they had the same idea. And then Charles Darwin wrote this book on the origin of species. Okay, 1959. Like how many years later? Like 20 years later, he finished the voyage. Okay, in college, I had the original English book and tried to read it. I never read it. Anyway, so that's the book. Okay. So Darwin accepted, doubted, and vindicated. It means he published the book, it sold out, scientists liked it, general public didn't like it, and there is a debates, and then finally, in science, in biology, we accept this evolution. Okay? Descent with modification was accepted by most scientists not long after publication of Darwin's On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection. That's the full title of his book, but usually we say Origin of Species. Okay? Scientists accepted it because it explains so many facets, so many facts, so many stories in biology. He can explain. The evolution can explain. Okay? So his study, and the sample he used is a pinch, small little birds from Galapagos Islands. Okay. And one is the evidence. Okay. Okay, so for example, it can explain this comparative embryology. Comparative embryology means you can compare the early embryo of different species animal. For example, this is sea lamprey. It's like 먹장어, 칠성장어. I don't remember exactly. It's a type of fish. Okay, they had a gill slit, which means agami. Okay, but the same structure is still remained in turtle and chicken and cat and human being. Okay, so this suggests if you design just human being from the beginning, you don't have to design this gill slits. Okay, You can't breathe in the water, okay? But why you have designed this gill slit? That's the same structure you found in fish, okay? So the only explanation is we are evolved from fish, although it took very, very long time, okay? Still, we have some vestigial organ, okay? For example, in the baby in mother's womb, if you take pictures, okay, we have still tail. Tail comes up long and then it disappears at some point. But we still have this tail bone. If you fall back, it hurts, okay? And this is why you sometimes swallow things into your trachea, you cough, okay? So if you could design two passages, one for air, one for food, they never mix up. But we use the same track, okay? Because breathing was not there at the beginning, okay? So we use the same track, and at the end, one goes to the lung, the other goes to your stomach, okay? So it's like computer program, okay? You start the program, version 1, okay? And then all of a sudden you don't rewrite the totally new program. What it is you modify it from version 1, version 2, version 3. You patch a little bit, each time a little bit. That's the evolution, okay? All right, so that's the concept. So the hypothesis that natural selection is the most important process underlying evolution was not generally accepted until the middle of 20th century. And what do you say about evolution at this point? Okay, in acceptance hinged on it's called modern synthesis. Okay, you have to remember this word, okay? Modern synthesis, what is it? In theory of evolution that brought together lines of evidence from genetics, the fossil record, the distribution of organisms throughout the world. Okay. So again, you have to remember this modern synthesis. What is modern synthesis? Okay. The convergence of several lines of biological research into a unified evolutionary theory. In other words, modern synthesis means it's a lot of genetics, all the biology merges into theory of evolution. Okay, so we can explain many, many things, all the things in biology by evolution. Okay, she's correct. So who created this clone ship? His favorite country singer, her name is Dolly Parton. Okay, she was a country singer, and then she has big breast. And do you remember the cell, the original cell coming from other cell? Other cell is mammary gland cells. Okay, so that fits in the kind of, it's a bad joke, but anyway, it's a politically incorrect joke. Okay, it's very, how can I say, macho-like thing. But anyway, so that's why he named after Dolly. Okay, I don't know her song, but yeah, I just know the name Dolly Parton. She is a country singer, a famous country singer in U.S. Okay, good homework. All right, still sleepy. Okay, let's go. So opposition to the theory of evolution. Still, up to this point, some of the states in United States, they try to ban teaching evolution in school. Okay, that's kind of religious idea. But let's see. Even today, the theory of evolution is regularly challenged as being unproven or simply wrong. Okay, familiar debate is it creation or is it evolution? 창조냐, 진화냐. Okay, but this is a little bit unbalanced debate. I'll come back. Okay, so one factor leading to the appearance of scientific debate, okay, over evolution is confusion about the meaning of the word theory. Okay, we talked about this scientific theory in the first chapter, right? When in English, when you do casual conversation, it's like, no, it's just a theory. Okay, in Korean, 그거 그냥 설이야, 설. Okay, but that theory is different from scientific theory. Do you remember from chapter 1? Theory is proven, okay, and supported by many lines of evidence. Okay, so in other words, up to this point, according to our biological knowledge, we proved that theory of evolution is correct. Okay, that's the scientific theory. Okay, it's not just unproven or. Though the average person may quote theory with just speculation, right? In science, a scientific theory is a general set of principles supported by lots of evidence that explains some aspect of natural world. Okay, so we'll go through, before we go through the evidence of evolution, let's go back to this debate, creation and evolution. Okay, have you heard about the book called Selfish DNA? 이기적 유전자? Do you remember who wrote that book? Huh? 누구? Dawson? Yes, Dawson. He wrote another book called God Delusion, 만들어진 신, translated into 만들어진 신. So my son, first year in high school, he started to read it and then he gave up in the middle. It's a very thick. Okay, my son is trying to prove that there's no God because I'm a Catholic. That's what it is. Okay, but there is a small book written by another Oxford professor saying Delusion of Dawson, which is, I forgot how to translate it. It's two opposite views about this God. Okay, so it's kind of the religion versus science. So I'm a scientist, not a good scientist, but I'm also a religious person. I'm a Catholic. So how do I think about evolution? Okay, so it's not object view because I'm a Catholic. So you will hear about biased view. Okay, so how can I reconcile this science versus religion? Okay, I accept evolution. This is, to my knowledge, and all the knowledge in biology is the evolution is the only unifying theory in biology. Okay, it can explain everything. Okay, so there's no doubt that evolution is true. Okay, then what? But evolution doesn't explain and cannot explain how the first life is formed. Okay, we can just assume or speculate. Let's really speculate the origin of the first life. We don't know. We just speculate based on this forms of life. We don't have evidence. We will never have evidence on that first life. Okay, that part is up to you whether you accept God created the first life, or just it's a matter of chance that molecules become the first life of. Okay, that's your choice, but evolution, after being the first life is being born or created, and then it's the evolution that you have to believe. Okay? That's a good answer? No? Bad? All right. So, here we go. What is the evidence of evolution? Okay. So this textbook says about 6 or 5 evidences. Okay. The first one, the 6 lines of evidence are consistent with the theory of evolution. The first one is called radiometric dating. It's not dating. It's not dating boy meets girls. It's dating means you can discover how old it is. Okay. So first, radiometric dating has confirmed the immense age of Earth. How old is Earth? I don't remember, but an age that is consistent with long periods of time, the scientists believed it has taken species to evolve. Okay, do you remember we had this, the mummy that was 5,000 years old, right? 5,000 year old mummy. So how can we say it's 5,000 years old? We used radioisotope, right? Carbon-14. And then we can calculate how old its sample it was. Okay, very similar way, we can use radioactive isotope, which the half-life is millions, billions years. Okay, not million, yeah, many million years, and we can calculate the age of Earth, and it has plenty of time. Okay, to go through modification and then become different species. And all the species we have at this point. Okay, so it's a very, very long time. Okay. The second, around the globe, the fossil from the same evolutionary periods are consistently found together in geological strata. Okay, so second evidence is a fossil evidence. What is fossil? Some of the life form is solidified as a rock. Okay, and then we can date how old that rock is. Okay, and in those rocks we have different forms of life forms. Okay, and then if we align all this species in line based on the age of the fossil, and it fits perfect with the story. Okay. Up to this point, mammals become, or, the dinosaurs were there, and more simpler animals, okay, and more complicated animals evolved after that. It's in the wrong order. Everything fits in this order. Okay, that's the second line. For example, I forgot this fossil, but. Okay? Yeah, 삼엽충. 그래. Third is comparative morphology and embryology. We went through this one a little bit. Okay? There's all these different species from fish to human. Okay? They have similar structures, which we don't need actually at this point. Okay? But that suggests this species coming from previous or a common ancestor. And then with modification. Okay? It's called comparative embryology or comparative morphology. Morphology is the shape. Morpho is the shape. Ology means it's the studying shape. Okay? Embryology means embryo. We heard about what is the embryo, right? There's the beginning form of, and that's embryology means studying those embryo. Okay? Third, the theory of evolution explains the common occurrence of homologous physical structures in different organisms. We have to remember this word, homologous structures. Do you remember homologous chromosomes? A set of chromosomes, one coming from father, one from mother. We call it homologous chromosome, right? But this is different. Homologous structures, 상동기관. We call it same, but it's not exactly same. But the origin is the same, okay? But outward is different. Whale, the front fin, okay? Cat, the front leg, and bat, their wing, and gorilla, the front arm, okay? They're all different structures, okay? But their basic design is exactly same. You color this bone, okay? You can test this structure if you go to Kentucky Fried Chicken or Popeye's chicken. Why? There's two wings, right? The drumstick and buffalo wings. 뭔지 알아? 닭다리하고 날개 쪽 밑에 다리. Okay? How many bones there is in drumstick? 닭다리 큰 닭다리 먹으면 뼈가 몇 개지? There's single bone. Okay? But if you eat little tiny buffalo wings, there's always two bones. Okay? One is a little thicker, one is a little thinner. Okay? Same thing. Our arm, the first bone from shoulder to elbow is one bone. And from elbow to ankle, two bones. Okay, one is bigger, thicker, one is thinner. Okay? So in other words, the original design is the same. Okay? And they changed a little bit and they use in different function. Okay? For bat, it's for flying. Whales, it's swimming. Okay? But the design is the same. Okay? So it's called homologous structure. We'll come back. We have another word. It's called analogous structure. 상사기관. Okay, they are different. They have different origin, but look like same. That's the opposite case. Okay? But this is homologous structures. Look different, but inside the same design. It's called homologous structure. All right. So evidence from biogeography, sorry. Okay. So this is how this Earth, okay, how all the continents change its shape over the many, many long time. So 250 million years ago, okay, all the continents were in this one big land, and then it will split up, changing shape. This is current shape of continent. Okay, so if you follow the distribution of species, okay, it is perfectly matched with this changing of continents. Okay, so biogeography, the geographic distribution of species on Earth island, is explained by the theory of evolution. Okay, that's why we call it modern synthesis. There's all the biology, genetics, everything merges into evolution. Okay? So evidence from gene modification. This is a little bit more molecular. We don't see it, but we can, understand. Fifth, variation found in the DNA sequence of various organisms are consistent with evolutionary theory. What do you mean by it? Okay? You start with the same genetic information. Okay, and you changing by time, little by little. Okay, if you have two species that is far, far away from each other, then you expect more change in DNA, right? If your species right next to it, okay, you see little change in DNA, right? And that's exactly how we find it. Okay? For example, human, pig, duck, snake, tuna, moth, and far away east, which is you use for baking bread, baking soda, or you make wine. Okay? If you compare the gene called Cytochrome C oxidase gene, this is gene, every organism has it because it has to have in mitochondria, I think it's for the oxidative respiration. Do you remember? The mitochondria generate ATP, and this is the gene, one of the genes that you have to have. Okay? And you compare the DNA sequence. Okay? Number of nucleotide base difference. This number says human and pig, the same gene, they have 13 bases different. Okay? But if you compare with tuna, you have 31 bases different. Okay? So the idea is if you're closely related, then you have more common things. Okay? If you're far away from each other and you have more change, okay? The change, the difference in DNA sequence represent the difference in outcome. Okay? So it matches. Okay? So experimental evidence. So can we repeat this, not the whole evolution, but very little, tiny, or at least natural selection is the driving force. Okay? In the textbook, they don't explain, but other textbook, they have some examples. The scientists who study evolution can do very simple experiments. Okay? And 6, the experimental demonstration of evolution has been carried out in the laboratory in nature. But you cannot wait many hundred years. Okay, can you repeat this thing in many years or within 10 years or 20 years? Yes, you can do it. Okay, guppies. How many of you know guppies? It's fish. Anybody has fish tank with guppies? Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So these people, group of people, did the experiment. Okay, because fish can go many generations in relatively short time. Okay, so the idea is guppy males, okay, can have many different forms, but the question is some guppy males are bright in color and gets bigger. Okay, and female prefer those bright color male. Okay. At the same time, bright color means great target for predator, the big fish that can eat this guppy. Okay, so they designed the experiment. They keep this population without any predator. Okay, and then keep this generation. What happened is in population, more and more bright colored, bigger males dominating. Okay, but the other group, if you introduce their predator, which can eat these guppies, and what happened is in that population, less bright and smaller, fast maturing males are dominant. In other words, there is a pressure from predator. Okay, so this has happened not only in fish tank, but they travel to remote area that nobody comes, okay? And they had different levels of a pond, and they introduce fish and their predator. And they come back every year about the same time that they collect samples and record. They study for 7-8 years in a row, and they found the same thing. Okay, so it's actually happening in nature. Okay, that doesn't explain, that doesn't prove all the things, but it's true that natural selection is working in the nature. Okay. All right, so 너무 일찍 끝났는데? Any questions? Oh, all right. The 4판 있어? 아, 이거 5판이야? The 4th edition had essay. Human skin color, different essay. Okay, in 4th edition, page 304, it says evolution of human skin color. But in 5th edition, they present interesting essay about who can drink milk without stomach ache. How many of you can drink milk without stomach ache? Ah, quite a few. Yeah. But 질문 이해 못했어. 우유 마시면 배가 거북하지 않은 사람. 그러니까. 오, 맞네. 벌써 진화한 것 같은데. So the reason why if you drink milk and you get stomach ache. That's natural. That's the original way, because the mammals, okay, we are mammals, right? 포유동물, okay? We're supposed to digest milk when we are only baby, okay? First 2 years. And then you have to stop drinking milk, okay? Otherwise, your mother always has to feed you, right? That's not possible. The first 1 year or so is the period you can digest milk, okay? After that, you don't make this enzyme that can cut the milk. The milk is lactose. Lactose is two sugar. It has to cut into single sugar. Then you can digest, okay? So it's only natural if you drink milk, your stomach is bloated, like, you know, it's an uncomfortable thing. But in very recent years, I don't know how many years, several thousand years, okay, within a few thousand years, okay, there's a mutation in DNA change base, okay, and some individual, okay, can make those enzymes, okay, and that the mutation happened or selection happened in only 3 cases in human race, okay, which they use their way of living is raising cattle and travel, okay. So in other words, the Middle East and some European, okay, they raise these cattle, cows or sheep, or there was always milk, but if you drink after you become 3 or 4 years old, you're supposed to have stomach ache, so you don't drink, okay? But a few individuals acquired that mutation, and they could drink milk. Think about how big advantage that was for little kids, 3 or 4 years. And your friends cannot drink milk, but you can drink milk. You become bigger, healthier, and what happens is you get married, you produce more children, and that mutation spread a lot in that population. That's why some European, some Middle East, I forgot one more, African population, they're over 95%, they can drink milk. But in Asia, we're not supposed to travel with cattle. We stay one place, we cultivate rice. The milk wasn't available, right? So currently, Asian, about 80%, if you drink milk, you have stomach problem, okay? So that is most recent, probably evolutionary change in DNA. And then that trait has been selected as a natural selection, okay? So that's an interesting essay, so you can read, and same thing for the 4th edition. Okay, I guess that's it. So next week, we'll go through chapters 17 and 18. That's the finish of book. And then first week of December, we'll go through all the chapters after the midterm exam for the final exam. It's kind of review. And then second week of December, we'll have exam. Okay? So I'll see you next week.